Hey, everybody, we're back and just had a fun time with a student interview and hope you can check that out. But we are back for the Abide in Me challenge. This is us reading through the book of Matthew and reading a chapter each day through Lent. And so we're coming down to the wire and towards the end. And so we are on chapter 22 of Matthew and just going to dive into that for a second. The thing is Jesus is in big with the religious leaders who are quizzing him and trying to trip him up and just messing with him all over the place, and yet Jesus responds in such great ways, like he does, and so it's pretty neat. When I was reading through this, Jesus has some great parables that he continues to share and talk through, but the piece that really spoke out to me was in two places, but one is less obvious than the first, and the first one is that the Pharisees in verse 16 are sharing of sending their disciples. The Pharisees are sending their disciples to come and trip up Jesus. And this is what they say about Jesus. And I just want us to hold these things that they share about Jesus. They say that we know that you are true. We know that you teach the way of God truthfully, and that you do not care about anyone's opinions, for you are not swayed by appearances. And another translation says that you do not show preference. And I just want us to think about that for a second, is that Jesus, just by what he does and by what he says, his actions and his words, not speaking specifically to any of these things, but just in what he does, people knew that he was speaking truthfully, that he was speaking about God in truth, and that he wasn't swayed by what others thought. And so, it's important that we speak out in truth, that we don't that we don't sugarcoat things at times just so that it sounds better, but that we share the truth, and that doesn't mean that we have to be mean-spirited people about things or share things harshly, but that we still share in truth and truthfully. But it also means that we act in truth, meaning that we share the truth, we tell the truth, we are truthful people, and so that when people look at us, they say, you know what, that's somebody I can trust and depend on because they are truthful. Their word means something. I believe that's really something that we should hold on to. But the second part too was that they don't care about any other's opinion. That Jesus doesn't care about others' opinions. You think about that for a second. If we care about what everybody else thinks about us or what everybody else is saying, we can be swayed real easily by what the latest thing is and what the most popular people are saying in any realm of life, whether it's the most popular preacher or the most popular pop person or the most popular just person in our culture, actor or athlete or anything like that. If we're always swayed by those people, that's going to continue to change. The people that are in the spotlight sharing those things, but also what they're saying. Like, it's not all the same, and it's not all in the same vein. And so it's important that we aren't swayed by just anybody and everybody, but that we are careful with the opinions of others. Doesn't mean we have to be disrespectful. It doesn't mean that we don't listen, but we have to be, just understanding where somebody's coming from, and also just holding that and saying, all right, how do I weigh this with where I am and what I believe and what I feel about these things? And especially with what Jesus was doing, because Jesus was totally flipping everything up on its head. And so Jesus could have easily been swayed by all the teachers and all the people who were doing their stuff for themselves. See, they were doing it out of selfish ambition or out of legalism, and he saw right through that, and he didn't allow himself to be swayed in that. And they saw that, and they realized that, and that's why that he was having trouble with them so many times throughout the later part of his life. And then the last part, I think, is really, really important for us, is They say, and you are not swayed by appearances. And the other translation, you show no preference. Appearances and preference, right? It's so easy to show preferential treatment to others. Maybe because they're our friends, or maybe because they have money, or because they have status. But to treat everybody equally is to do what Jesus does. And I think we need to remember that and realize that and think about that before we do certain things that may exclude other people. And the piece too that is not swayed by appearance. The saying is that you don't judge a book by its cover, right? Everybody's heard it so much that everybody ignores it. But it's true, right? Like appearances. That we shouldn't judge people by how they look, that how they appear to us, that we should get to know them, we should share with them, we should talk with them, we should hear their story before anything else, any other thought about who they are comes up, but allow them to share who they are and not let us judge their appearance or decide who they are based on their appearance. There are a lot of people who look a lot of different ways. And some of us look nicer and some of us don't. But that doesn't change our worth. And Jesus really showed that again. He didn't say those things to the T, but he, in the way he was living and in the way he was teaching and in the way he was caring for people, in the way that he didn't show preferential treatment to anybody, that he treated everybody equally and he healed equally and he gave people his time. And so I think that's an important piece for us to hold on to, is the fact that showed no preference and wasn't swayed by appearance. Two big things that I think is ruled in our world: the preference, if I scratch your back, you scratch mine, so I'm going to only scratch the backs of the people who can do more for me later. That type thing. Or the appearance, to say, if I look the part, then I am the part. If I don't look the part, I can never be the part. And Jesus says, no, I'm not going to be swayed by any of that. I'm not going to be swayed by what somebody looks like, because I can see into their heart. And I'm not going to be swayed by this or that because that's not what I am. I'm going to see who the person truly is, not what the outward shares to me. I'm not going to show preference based on what humanity says is the most important things. So I hope that we can hold on to that tonight. I think those are some really important pieces from what Jesus was showing others, and then they named it right back to him. And you know that when people say these things about you like this, then you know you're doing it, right? Like, you want people to say these things about you that they said about Jesus. And then the last part is a pretty obvious one, but Jesus shares about the greatest commandment, and that he says is, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself is the second commandment. Here the law and the prophets rest on these. You know, today more than ever, right? How do we love God with our heart, soul, and mind? How do we give God our heart, soul, and mind each and every day in some moment? And then how do we look to care for our neighbors as ourselves? What are the things that we need to be reaching out to care for our neighbors as we would want people to care for us? You know, the Golden Rule shows those things to us, and we look back at it and we say, okay, maybe I'll ignore that today, or maybe I'll do it. But for us to look at it and say, what am I doing to reach these two things? Not that we're trying to always gain something in it, but that we are trying to follow after what Christ has set before us. So those were the two things that I took away from chapter 22. Tomorrow we're going to be at chapter 23, and there's not too many more chapters to Matthew, and so we're coming up on it. This is the week before Holy Week, and so we're kind of hitting in line a little bit. We're a little off. I think we'll finish a little before we get in the full swing of Holy Week. But thanks for joining us. And again, leave your comments about what stood out to you in chapter 22 of Matthew. We'd love to hear what God's saying to you and what's popping out for you. That way we can grow and learn from what you share with us. Thanks again, and hope you all have a great night.